Good morning, Vic. It's John McCormick. How are you?
Rose looked good, Mike.
How's it going, Mr. Walker? Thank you. Thank you.
Good morning.
Morning, Paul.
Good morning, guys. It's John.
Hey,
How you
Joe.
doing, Vic?
Mike, can you say something? I'm having trouble on my audio.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Okay, I can't hear you. Okay. I'm gonna have to get off.
We can hear you.
Wait a minute. I got it.
You got it?
I'm good now. Thank you.
Okay.
Paul, did you sleep there?
No, I was able to go home, fortunately.
You had more snow down there?
We had more snow. I mean, I live in Homedale, so we had probably 3 inches, maybe 4. So I think we got a little more snow down there than we did up here. That's what my back is telling me, shoveling our driveway, so.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to be off video for a minute, but I'm here and can hear you. I'll be right back.
Okay, okay, we're gonna get started. I see John. Oh, I didn't know the other John was coming.
John
Okay,
and John.
John and John. Very
Good
cool.
morning, Vic.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone.
So I don't see Brian, did you want to say anything before we started, or you just want to come to all our meetings?
Hi, Vic. Yeah, I thought I'd make myself a nuisance until I learn how the system works.
That's okay. You're not a nuisance. All right. You have anything you want to say or no?
Well, let's see. No, not yet. We're still
Okay.
kind of pulling the
Okay.
pieces together. Yeah.
All right. Our first item is the sanitary sewer smoke test. Paul, do you want to set that up and then have John run through whatever he's going to run through with us?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. DeLuca. So, during the last few years, the township has noticed that portions of our sanitary sewer have been surcharging. And when we inspect them further, we find that a lot of the effluent and waste flowing through the system seems to be diluted, and that's causing the extra volume of effluent flowing through the system is really causing a lot of problems with people. There's flooding basements with sewage and other problems. And this really started at the lower portion of Boyden Avenue, which prompted us to, evaluate really what's happening, not just there, but throughout our township. So we authorized Mott McDonald, and John Ruskey is present on behalf of Mott McDonald. And we authorized them to perform basically a flow test of our town. They placed meters throughout our township, which measured the rise in effluent and the discharge, before and after storm events. So they got a baseline, and then when a storm event hit, they could determine which sections of our township actually received more discharge and flow. And the question is, what's causing this? Our system's old. It's, most of it is clay pipe. It's 100 years old or older in some cases. And, what's causing this? And when you see peaks right after a storm event, that's not normal. It's not just a cracked pipe or inflow. We believe a lot of it could be illicit connections. It could be basement sump pumps that are tied into the sanitary sewer. It could be a catch basin that was connected to the sewer. But something is causing this rapid increase in flow that we're experiencing, and it's really wreaking havoc for our residents in our township. So one solution to address this is to perform what's called a smoke test. I don't purport to be an expert in this at all. I don't want to overextend myself here, which is why I asked Mr. Ruskey to, chime in on this and attend this meeting to educate us a little on this. So, Mr. Ruskey?
Sure. Let me just share my screen if I'm allowed to. Let's see. Yep. So as Paul indicated, we did install flow meters throughout the township, and so we had the meters in for well over a month, and we did capture a precipitation event, so we could see during the baseline flow of the flow meters, and then all of a sudden we see a spike after we had this rainfall event. And you could see a pattern where the flow is very instantaneous. It's not like it's seeing a delay in that peak flow. It's very, very quickly that you see the increase in flow in proportion to the storm event. So it is indicative that stormwater is in fact getting into the sanitary sewer system. So the intent of the smoke test is to target points that may be introducing stormwater into the sewer system. And some of the common connections that we see is people have, or even on commercial properties or residential properties, roof leaders are connected into the sanitary sewer. You'll also see, on occasion, you'll see there's actually a municipal storm drain that was accidentally connected into the sanitary sewer, or you'll see drains on private property that actually drain. So the intent of the smoke test, and then just to highlight the locations that we saw, we're targeting three areas that we saw the highest and very significant increase in flows. And in these areas, we're also seeing some locations where basements are being impacted. So it does correlate with where we're seeing a lot of problem areas, with where we saw some really high peaks in the flows in the sanitary sewer. And it's primarily on the eastern portion of the township, adjacent to Irvington. It's in these two districts. You'll see the various different colors represent the various different meters that we've had installed. And really the eastern portion is we're going to need to target this area. And also this area designated as 3, it's Parker Road is another area where we found very high flows in the system. So with smoke testing, what you do is you induce, it's a non-toxic smoke that's injected into one of the manholes, and you isolate the system, and it puts smokes into the system. And that smoke, after you induce the smoke, you basically walk the road to see where you can see the smoke coming out. It's a white smoke, and you'll see it coming out of roof leaders. You'll see it out of drains and such, and then you just systematically move from section to section and inducing the smoke to see where the material is coming out. We do we do need proper notification for the property owners, knowing that we're going to be in the neighborhood. We are going to be doing this work. Usually we put a flyer out early, and then we put door tags out to just inform people exactly when we're going to be doing the test, so it's no surprises. Occasionally, and it's very rare, you actually could have smoke coming into someone's house. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, because if smoke is getting, and again, it's non-toxic, and smoke gets into someone's house, that's actually an indication that potential harmful sewer gas could also get into a home. So it does alert a property owner if they do have a problem with their plumbing, if they have a dry trap or a broken pipe inside their house. It actually alerts the homeowner to a hazardous situation that they should correct. So, but that is very infrequently that it happens. It really doesn't. It's not it doesn't. We've done this many times, and it's very infrequent that actually occurs. But we do coordinate with the fire department, letting them know, and emergency services, just so that if they do get any calls, they're aware that we're doing smoke testing in the area and going forward. So it's a systematic approach, and the intent is to identify where infiltration is getting into the system.
So John, let's go through this a little bit. So let's say you do my block and you find that out of one of the catch basins along the road, smoke comes out. That would tell you that there's a mistake in the connection of that storm sewer to the sanitary sewer. What is the solution to that?
That's a solution. It's comes sometimes that solution, when I find that it can be a costly solution, because usually, although it was a mistake, there's a convenience of why it was connected to the sanitary sewer, and so there may not be other storm sewers in the area. So sometimes it does require an extension of a storm sewer to connect that catch basin. So sometimes those solutions are quick. Sometimes they're a little bit more complicated and expensive to correct, to get those done. But that does represent a substantial amount of flow coming into the sewer system. So that's some finding those are not. You don't find a lot of those connections, but if you do, that's considered a grand slam, because that's inducing a lot of flow into the system.
To Mr. Ruskey's point, our sanitary sewer, many of the pipes are 8-inch, some of them are 10-inch, and some of them are 12-inch. But if they connected, for example, a 8 or 10-inch pipe to the catch basin to make a connection, picture how that would surcharge the sanitary sewer, right? It's using almost the full capacity of the sewer. It could be one or two catch basins that, that could cause a major problem like this. So we suspect that that's occurring, and it's something we have to identify.
And then what is the solution if you see that there's smoke coming out of a leader?
If you see it coming out of a roof leader, the homeowner needs to be contacted because that is a violation of your ordinances regarding connections into the sanitary sewer. And usually, what happens is we send a notice and we just try to work with the homeowner to disconnect that connection, identify how they can correct that and work with the homeowners. Hopefully, it doesn't have to turn into issuance of a summons in violation of a local code. But usually, the first approach is a soft hand to inform them of the problem and work with them to get it corrected.
And is your experience that you find more of those? What,
Yeah.
well, what is your experience? What do you find most is the infiltration?
A lot of times with the infiltration, you'll see a lot of times the clean out caps, because what you have is a sewer main in the road, and then you have a lateral, and then you have a clean out cap, and a clean out before the private sewer. So there's a pipe that is right outside the right of way that distinguishes between the municipal and the private sewer, and that cap is a lot of time is off, and we usually find a lot of water flowing in through that. It's through someone's front yard flowing into those caps, and that's very common. Those are a very quick fix. All you have to do is put the cap back on the clean out, or lower the clean out. A lot of times with people will cut their lawn and they'll hit the clean out. It breaks it and they ignore it. So that's a common. You're not getting a lot of flow in that type of connection, but if you get enough of them, it does contribute to it. The next, I said the higher priority is the a roof leader. Roof leaders are common. It's just a convenience that they're connected. So those are usually predominant. And then, like I said, when you're walking down the road, it's very easily to see. You'll see the smoke coming out of the gutter of the house and just off that leader, and it's easy to see. But then I would say the least common is having a catch basin in the municipal road, because usually the municipalities, DPW knows the difference between a storm sewer and a sanitary, and that's very uncommon to have that done. But it does occur. It does occur. We did some just recent work in Scarsdale, New York, and we've actually found a whole drainage system that was connected to the sewer system, and that was if it was something more than a grand slam, that was it. But usually we do see, and occasionally you actually see a major crack in the sewer pipe that you'll actually see smoke coming out of the ground. That's not common, but it does occur.
Does anyone have any comments or questions? And then I'm going to turn to you, Patrick, to just talk about how we would move this forward, just operationally, because I know you were in some meetings, but I wanted to see if any of the township committee members had any. Deb?
I guess I have a question. I just can't, it's so small, I can't see any of their writing. So I'm like,
Yeah, if you can make that bigger, and then
so
we'll
I'm
give you a sense of where things are.
Yeah, because I'm just
So,
curious. So you
yeah.
said the one part of town has you're seeing more of it. I'm just curious about the measurements and how that is, and are there more I don't know. I'm just trying to understand a little bit because it feels like we're highlighting the lower income area economic of our town, and it just makes me worried about the optics of what this is that we're going to be doing smoke
Right.
in these areas, and so that's kind of where I want to understand a little bit the numbers better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can see, one of the prime areas that has been a historic problem in this area is on Bowden, where there's a number of homes that have had sewage backup into the homes, primarily due to the surcharges that occur, and those surcharges occur during storm events. And so, this is probably the largest area where we're seeing a lot of backups, and this system ultimately is the low point before it ultimately connects into Irvington, but it captures this entire all this drainage areas, number one, the blue area, the green area, all this flows into that area. So the stormwater could be a number of leaks throughout this area that ultimately flows down to, this area where we're seeing a substantial amount of surcharging. So this is probably the most the higher impact, and it's correlating to where we're seeing backups into the homes. The second area that we're seeing is over here on Parker Road, is that where we're seeing a lot of surcharges. There have been some surcharges on homes over here, but we're seeing very high flows in this area. It is unfortunate that this area, there's no correlation whatsoever regarding, the demographics or whatever in this area. It's purely based on the flows that we observed and where we're seeing the surcharges.
And just, this plan doesn't show it, but we did have a tort claim on Parker Avenue not too long ago. So that actually correlates with our observations as well. Backups in the sanitary sewer. 10 Parker, it's actually listed right there.
And then
So
I guess my other
yeah.
question would be, because on the other end, like you're saying, it's costly to fix. So then I'm just wondering, like, I'm just aware of, like, taxes just went up, the reassessments, like people are already feeling it. And then we're saying, oh, you have an illicit connection and now you have to spend all this money to fix it that you don't have. I'm just like worried about, like, is there help? Like, how does that whole work? Who funds it?
Yeah, like I said, if it's something related to the town, the township would take the responsibility of fixing that. But you also have to take into account that, we're always trying to save money. We don't want to put more burden on the taxpayers, but this is also a health issue that you have homes that are sewage is backing up into the homes, and so it's kind of an urgent issue that that needs to be addressed. And so, certainly some of the costs that are associated with changing out a clean out, that's something that's minimal costs. You can go to Home Depot and fix that cap. And most of the times, townships usually just fix that. They don't turn to the homeowners to fix the clean outs. And then if it is a roof leader, they can just disconnect the pipe at the ground. And it's usually an easy fix to correct that. And so that's not a high cost either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mr. DeLuca, if the fix was related to a catch basin, for example, or stormwater inlet, is that something we could charge the utility for that type of repair?
Yes.
I would think so.
Yeah. I mean, there may be some rationale to help solve all this through the utility, because we're trying to redirect stormwater into the storm system. And so there may be some ways to help people do some of these fixes. But I will say, I just want to repeat what John said about, John, can you go down to the lower Boyden? This lower part of Boyden Avenue. I mean, Paul and I have been here, I think it's 491, is that right, Paul? Where we've seen twice now,
Yes.
his basement just full of sewage. And just throwing everything out, losing everything in the garage. And that happens in a number of these homes. We had a situation on Jacoby. So there's a cost to somebody. These folks down here are bearing a cost too. So trying to get this fixed. We've had situations where the sanitary sewer just shoots out of the manhole in the center of the road, and you get stuff all over the place. So I think we're trying to figure out how to make it work better for everyone.
So Vic, in those homes that you've identified, and I do remember those incidences, you're right, storm after storm for those folks there. They're municipal related, right? They're not related to illicit connections. Is that right?
It's related to the flow that's flowing through the pipe. The flow through the pipe is the surcharge is so significant, and that's what's backing it up.
But Mr. Dappis, to your point, the flow through the pipe is elevated because we believe of illicit connections and improper connections
So
But
let
not there. Not
throughout the
there.
area.
not
Not
there
there.
though.
Upstream.
Upstream. Right. So let's talk a little bit about the illicit connections. I mean, to what extent, I mean, we're calling them illicit collections and connections rather, and that is pretty charged term. I mean, to what extent are these knowing and or possibly even intentional? I mean, I would think that the majority of folks don't even know that that's happening with their house.
Yeah, and
Well-
the term illicit connection is actually an industry standard, and it's actually in the DEP code regarding that. So I know it's a bit aggressive, but that is a common term that's used. And you're right, some of these homeowners may not even know that that there's an issue. And like I said, when we identify the homeowners, commonly it's a soft hand to identify them that there is a problem. We're not looking at issuing summonses right away because they're breaking the law. They're breaking the municipal code. That's not the approach that would be the first step. But if we know that it's a connection that's imposing a lot of water into the sewer system, and someone is just completely ignoring our friendly approach, that it may lead to a summons if it's aggressive enough. But the intent here is not to penalize people and come down with the hammer. It's just to identify a problem and work with the homeowners to correct it.
It's real, that's just it. We're
But
trying to
just-
fix a serious problem here.
So just to be clear, though, the smoke test just gives us information. Then it's
Correct.
on us to decide what to do about that with that information.
That is
Understood.
correct.
So if
That
we
is
see a lot of connections that we want to have changed, then we can discuss a plan of how to move forward there. It's not automatically we do smoke tests and then we take the list and give them summonses. We would have that information and then we could strategize as to how to move forward.
Correct. Yep.
Would we?
Again,
we
and
have-
just the smoke
Sorry.
test will be able to help us to ascertain the difference between the catch basins and the illicit connections. That's the bottom line, right? That's why we're exploring this, right?
Correct. The smoke test is to identify the source, and that source could be multiple ways of how the water is getting in. But the smoke test, the basic approach is that we're trying to identify where the water is getting in. Where the
Understood.
storm
Thank you.
is getting in.
So I'd like to hear from Pat, but if we were to move forward with these smoke tests, I'm curious about like the timeline and like what kind of public communication we can do. Like, I feel like this warrants like a town meeting more than just like an email. I don't know. I just know that especially in this area, people get frustrated because they're not really communicated to, or things happen and there's a lot of infrastructure issues. And it's just, we have to be mindful of how we're communicating, because if you're all of a sudden saying we're doing smoke tests and you see smoke coming out of places in your house, and again, this might have been years and years and years ago before they even moved in. So I just want to hear about like, think about how we're going to communicate and what the timeline is.
So I think what I envision, and Mr. Reski, correct me if I'm wrong, but we would break this up into sections based on the piping, right? Based on the mains, what sections of the highlighted areas would be isolated, and we could provide notices. We could provide VMS boards, the messaging boards that you see in the street that are electronic. So we can provide, all of the noticing up front so that people are not confused. We'd also communicate with the fire department to make sure that they understand we're doing smoke testing, so they know if they do get calls, it's more than likely us doing the smoke testing. So, we do envision a heavy public noticing and communication up front. Absolutely.
Yeah, the actual implementation is quick. This does not take months. It's not going to take weeks. You're talking days in the various different sections. So the implementation is quick. But I do appreciate what you're saying regarding the notification. That is key to make sure that proper the residents are properly notified. And certainly I'll defer to Paul. I haven't done it. I haven't done this before, but I've done it for other reasons. Having just to call in a public meeting and just have I've given presentations at school oratoriums regarding to a whole community for hundreds of people regarding that. So however the township wants to approach this to inform people of the need and what's happening, of the hazards, and I would hope people can appreciate once you explain the problems that are here regarding the backups and the issues that there is an urgent need to correct this situation.
Now, just to be clear, Mr. Reski, with traps and plumbing code, right, if it's all done properly, there should be no smoke coming into their house, and there should be no leaders that,
Oh,
smoke
absolutely.
contaminated.
Absolutely. And again, it's a non-toxic smoke, but it is something that if it's, and it's very uncommon, but if someone does get smoke into their house, that's, it's not a bad thing. It's actually a good thing to alert that homeowner that there is a potential hazardous situation, because sewer gas, that methane can get into the homes, and it is toxic, and it could create a hazardous situation inside a home. So it's good to alert the homeowners that if you do find smoke getting into your house, they need to speak to a plumber, and I'm sure we can coordinate with the plumbing inspector in town to give someone guidance regarding, issues with that.
So one thing that we talked about when we were doing these preliminary meetings is just this, is to how to, John, can you make this a little smaller, the map? I want to
Sure.
bring in District 3. But one thing we talked about is how do we get this so that it doesn't just appear that it's on the east side. So by incorporating District 3 or Section 3 here, this goes down to Valley. So this captures a lot, this is a little broader than just the east side. This is the sort of the north side of town and the east side. So by doing all this, I think we can, couch it in a bigger effort here than just particularly on the east side of town.
Yeah,
Although
and
we are,
I think we approach that, we do that section first. And so we make sure that we check that section so that people know that, we've already looked at other parts of town. We're not just focusing on this particular section.
I like the
Um,
idea of even just doing a video about talking about like we're doing this, but also what you're saying about how it's a health benefit and the reason and whatnot. Like even if we don't, like a public Zoom would be great to record it. I don't know if people would watch, but like a video that we can have on our website of you speaking about it so that we can have something to share with them and a way for people to be able to ask questions back. Like is I think important.
Yeah, we might be able to do something like that. We also might be able to get pictures of some of these homes when they had the flooding,
Yeah.
and what a mess it was. But
Could I ask,
Nancy wanted to
could I
talk,
ask-
and then Patrick, and then we're going to move on.
good. I just wanted to ask if there's any way to tell for down on Boydham where, Vic was talking about all the stuff in the basement and everything, and that those aren't the illicit connections themselves. How far away is there any way to tell, like, how far up is it? Right adjacent to where it's backing up to where the non-illicit connections are, or is it way upstream, if you will?
We don't know exactly where that flow is. We're actually seeing there's no one smoking gun. We know from the flow meters that there's no one smoking gun that we're going to find. We're going to probably find multiple situations in each one of these areas. So it's really collective between all three of these areas, that the green, the blue, and the yellow. All three of these areas we're getting some increases in flow, more so upstream. Frankly, we're seeing a lot more further upstream than all the way. So you can see the distance that we're going, but all this flow from this point all flows down through all the network of sewers down to Bowdoin. So it is more. It's probably going to see much further away from the road up the stream.
Okay, but that wouldn't, so I guess logically it takes a while to get before it starts backing up as it's flowing down toward that section.
Yes, well, once you start, once the flow is introduced, you start to see surcharges in the pipes, but it's not until all these inflows that are coming in accumulate together that you're starting to see very high surcharges where you're surcharging into the homes. So you can still see some surcharges in some of these areas. And we actually saw that in the meters, that the sewers are surcharging, but they're not surcharging enough where it's backing into the homes. So the accumulation of all the inflow of these three areas, ultimately, all that accumulation, it keeps adding up as more and more flow is added, because all the flow is flowing downward in this direction. So as you're getting more flow into it, the surcharge is getting greater and greater and greater until towards the end of this run, this branch of sewers, it gets very high in this area.
Does that branch extend outside of Maplewood? Like
It eventually goes into Irvington, yes.
we know if there's any of the same issues there?
I'm sure there are.
Yeah, we're not aware, but we do know that at this, there is a manhole that does surcharge, which is another, it's not directing the homeowners, but it is an environmental issue that if you have the surcharging of this manhole that's now going into the stream in the brook in this area, that's not, from a DEP's perspective, that's just as bad as having the homes being surcharged. So I think that we're almost having like a relief manhole that's preventing further surcharges downstream because you're surcharging at that manhole and the sewage comes out of it. But we do, even in the meter at the end of the town border, it's still being surcharged. So this surcharge is still happening. This is where we're getting a substantial amount of surcharge in this run. And then at the end of right at the end of the street, when it hit right at Irvington, we do have that manhole that surcharges.
Just to give you an idea, I mean, that the flow through that main, we upgraded the siphon down there, right? And Mott did that work, but the flow through that pipe, that barrel was a 12-inch pipe. We have a 12-inch and a 10-inch for that barrels. They were flowing like jets during, some of these storm events. I mean, there was so much flow going through it. It was ridiculous. And if you look at the design of the system, John, if we didn't have illicit connections, if we didn't have improper connections, would you say that the collection system is adequate for our town?
Yeah, oh yes, absolutely. Absolutely. It's not a capacity issue. It's a capacity issue because of the surcharges. But if you look at the base flow, there's more than adequate capacity looking at the base flow when the non-rainfall events. There's not a problem at all. And it's very instantaneous when you have the correlation between the rainfall event and where we're seeing the spikes. And in fact, we don't need to remove all the water that's getting into the sewer system because you have such a substantial spike. Even if you shave that spike so that you just reduce it to a certain percentage, you're going to eliminate the surcharges here. So because usually with a infiltration system, program, you're not going to get 100% of the flow. We're not going to get it so that the sewer is you're never going to have a sewer that's 100% tight. You'll still have cracks. You'll still have groundwater infiltration, and we may not find every connection that we find that just is not evident when we do the smoke testing. Smoke testing is very effective, but nothing's 100%. But I think it's a very effective program where we're going to connect enough that we eliminate enough to eliminate the surcharges and not impact those homes.
And one last thing, I know we're short on time here. This also combines with the sewer test, the sewer video and cleaning that we've done through Red Zone Robotics. So once that's hammered out, we know the condition of the mains, and once we do the smoke testing, we'll know the illicit connections. I think the system will be in much better shape once those deficiencies are addressed.
And once we have all that information, we'll be able to sort of talk about which alternatives for correcting the situation might be better, or might be like, I don't know, maybe installing, new lines or lining the existing pipes or something like that as opposed to having illicit connection corrections.
You have two different means of getting in water infiltration getting into the sewer system. It's either through inflow, which represents inflow from surface water getting in, and you have infiltration, which is groundwater getting in. The smoke testing is going to capture only the inflow portion where we have surface water flowing directly into the sanitary sewer. The smoke test is not going to identify locations that infiltration is getting in, such as a sump pump. It's not going, because usually a sump pump has a check valve. You're not going to get smoke into someone's house through a sump pump. But again, from what we see with the flow monitoring, is that we're seeing the quick peak that we're seeing in correlating with the timing of a storm event. A lot of the impact is from inflow, not from infiltration.
And I think it's worth expanding on that a little bit. So they're looking at rainfall over time, and they're looking at flows in the system over time, and they can see that the dramatic increase in flows is so close to the rainfall that it's unlikely, at least the majority of this excess flow is the rain hitting the ground, percolating, and finding its way through a crack in the sewer. It just because it happens so quickly, it's more likely that it's going into a gutter and right into the sewer, or it's going into a manhole and right into the sewer.
Yeah. Yeah, understood.
Patrick, how do we move forward if we do, do we have to go out to bid? Is this professional service? Where do we have the money?
Yeah.
This portion of the work was already awarded in a contract that the township committee had made last year. So we've already contracted for the work. The next thing to do really is schedule for timing. And when we discussed last time, we want to find some nice clear weather in the spring. And then we'll start backing up from that to talk about what our communications would be. So I'd imagine they'll start with a conversation of the township committee, start with maybe some email. Paul had mentioned VMS boards. We could even do something with, news outlets that have an interest in covering this type of municipal improvement. I think most effective will be more immediate prior to the work where we're going door to door, we're, dropping off paperwork, leaving door hangers. And we'll also be in the street that day, right? And so it's when this testing is done, we'll have DPW and we'll have engineering trucks out there in the roadway, and we'll be walking up and down, so it'll be obvious to residents what we're doing. But we want to have a robust communications plan, and I also think an important piece of that plan is the first time we put information out to the public, explaining that plan, right? You can expect to see these things going along with this timeline. We're going to start sending emails. You're going to get door hangers. You're going to see VMS boards. We're going to have a public meeting. So I think we can start working on that now and present it to the township committee, what that would look like.
Okay, so we will put together a plan. And we're going to start this in a couple of months.
Yep.
Okay.
We have our communications committee meeting on Tuesday, so I'll put it on the agenda.
Great.
Okay. I think that's it. We're going to move on. John, thank
Okay.
you. You're welcome to stay for the rest
Nope.
of the hour and a
All
half.
right.
Okay.
Take care,
John,
everyone.
thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Nice to meet everyone.
Paul, I know you have John McCormick on. I didn't know if he was here for a particular section of the agenda.
I think Mr. McCormick is here just to address any questions on the bike lanes, the design of Parker Avenue, for example, any questions on Prospect, and to address any traffic calming issues that may arise.
Well, we'll deal with Parker first. So we started yesterday our meetings with some stakeholders. We had a meeting with the Maplewood Jewish Center, the rabbi, and the director of the Child Care Center. It was a challenging meeting. They had some concerns about their operation. It's a 7-day operation, generally from very early in the morning till 7 at night. They have events there. And the conflict of people dropping off and picking up on Parker and the bike lane is real. So that was our first meeting. We're meeting with the principal of the high school today, and we'll get some more feedback, and then we'll start meeting with the residents. So they did give us some suggestions about other streets we might want to consider. We'll put all this together, and we'll have all this for us to continue to have a conversation about.
Mr. McCormick, to that point, I think there were some valid concerns and things that we have to, evaluate and look at. Maybe there's things we could tweak in the design. So maybe at some point, we could take this offline and have a discussion on that to improve it.
Certainly. Ready to talk about it when you are.
Kind of wish I was invited to those meetings. I'll just say that out loud. How are you approaching, what's the structure of them, and what was the conversation like, and how is it being pitched? And are they for Maplewood Jewish Center you said you met with? So they have 2 locations on the area, right?
Right.
So
Yep. We talked about
both
both.
locations, or what? I don't know. I guess I'd like a little bit more. We don't have to talk about it right now. We can take it offline or see the
Oh,
report.
just simple. I mean, we didn't talk much about the center on Prospect and Parker. Well, just let me back up. We talked about, a global effort to do a complete streets, that we're talking about balancing the needs of auto, pedestrian, and bikers. We talked about the benefit of Parker being a collector street or a throughway street from one side of the town, collecting parks. We're connecting parks, commuters, school kids. So that's how we pitched it to them. They were aware of it. I mean, there's talk on the street already. So then we focused on their building on Parker, the center where they have the childcare center.
Don't they have a driveway for drop off where they drop off?
They do, but there's also people who pull up on both sides of the street and get their kids out and get
But I'm
there.
sure
And
they
then
did-
we talked about the building on the corner of Prospect and Parker is to be demolished. New building is going to be built. There'll be an apartment there, a 3-bedroom apartment, and then there'll be various programs for younger children, for some teen programs, adult programs. They didn't think that was as big a problem because there's limited parking there now. So that didn't see, and then there's a lot of those kids are walking, they're walking to there. Some of the nannies, she said some of the nannies are taking them there during the day. So that is not as much of a problem, although they did have they shared their experiences of that corner and the difficulty of moving around there. So that's what we talked about. We met yesterday afternoon,
And then when are you meeting with Mr. Sanchez?
2
Today?
o'clock.
I was thinking about that this morning as I was doing drop off. Like, I feel like for the high school, there needs to be like a drop off zone or something, because that is, I think, going to be the biggest issue. It's so trafficy over there in the morning.
Yeah. And you've been to childcare programs, you just see them around there. There's a huge drop off in the morning and a pickup at night.
But that one I'll push back on, because when they got approved, they had to have a circulation plan, and they have the drop off driveway. So I get that parents might be dropping off in other areas, but in the plan, I had a childcare center. You have to have a circulation plan. You have to show where it's not impacting.
Yeah,
So
they understood that, and they understood that, we told them that, we're starting these meetings and we're gathering information. We're going to be, doing some institutional meetings first and then setting up Zoom meetings for residents. And they asked if this was a done deal. We said it was a direction we're moving, but, we're going to take everybody's opinion into consideration.
Just to be clear, Vic, when you say we meet, I think you should be clear. It's you, Paul, Patrick, and then whoever you're meeting with. As chair of engineering. Right.
Correct. And these are daytime meetings, so nighttime meetings will be different because we'll be able to schedule them and accommodate more availability. John, we've been talking about Prospect Street and where we put the cones and wanting to put some some of the quick curb stuff there, the bollards there. You have any thoughts on that?
I agree with it. I think any kind of traffic calming measures that we can implement out there would be beneficial. The cones are a good start, but they're very much temporary, as you can tell, because they kind of get moved around. So something a little bit more physically stable would be good. If and when the town goes through Prospect and does the old corridor, we can look to physically extend the curbs and do different things like that. But in the meantime, providing a little bit of structure and stability to those traffic calming tools would be good.
Now, Mr. McCormick, I know that we had come up with a draft plan with you for Oakland and Elmwood, and we worked out, the placement of the cones, so we have a draft plan for that. I think we'd be willing and able to go out for an RFP and get pricing on that in relative short order. So that's something I think we could do sooner than later. I think the rest of the corridor, that's something that is part of our design. We do have a municipal aid grant for Prospect. So that's something that the final design, I think that's going to all be worked out, when that occurs. The municipal aid, which is probably 2026, the construction.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I think those bump outs are good. What that's gonna do is gonna limit the ability for people to bypass vehicles that are turning left. So you're not gonna have people running cars right up along the curb. So it's gonna be a measure of protection for the pedestrians that need to cross. It's just gonna calm and organize that little S-curve offset intersection area. I think it has worked to date, and I think making it a little bit more physically stable will be good.
I'll just again express my disappointment in bump outs when we're talking about also bike lanes. And I know
Mhm.
we've talked about how bump outs don't necessarily affect bike lanes, but I still in my head, like we always say, we can't do protected, it's hard to do protected bike lanes because the streets aren't wide enough. So, but
Mhm.
you're putting bump outs, you're narrowing the street. So then it makes
Mhm.
bike lanes more difficult. And so I just want to look at a perspective. I know we have complete streets on the agenda about how we're trying to make the streets safer. We're trying to decrease cars on the road and look at other ways to make biking and walking. And I have the jitneys on the agenda. So bump outs still make me concerned because I don't really buy that. If the street's not
Mhm.
wide enough for protected bike lanes, then I don't think the streets are wide enough for these bump outs. And I don't want to spend money on something that we're just going to have to remove. Dave Barry, I think you have your hand raised.
I, I don't think that's unusual. I mean, I don't disagree that I don't think the streets are so wide and the crossings are so wide that we need bump outs unless you're using them for traffic calming for the cars. But it really, I don't disagree with Deb on, we can't, I've been yelling about the Prospect Church bump out forever, so I just don't think that's a good street for the bump outs. There's other things we can do, including the road diet with striping.
So just so we're clear, what we're talking about are temporary bollards. They're more permanent than a cone, but they basically have a base and screw into the asphalt. So they can be moved in the future. And I think, John, in terms of the bike plan, once Prospect is complete, any type of bump out or physical barrier that's proposed is also going to consider bike lanes in along that stretch, correct?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, so yeah, I think we've got to focus. We have not yet begun having a discussion about the future of Prospect. That's what we said we were going to do this year. At the same time, we said we're going to replace the cones with the quick curbs. So where are we with getting the quick curbs, Paul?
We have a plan and we're gonna circulate that in the next week or so to get an RFP to get pricing. And once we get the pricing, we'll look to award that work.
So we're talking a month?
We're probably talking about a month or so. It could be a little more if the bollards are on back order. So we don't control, inventory of things, but yeah, it's gonna be in the near future.
Why did it take so long? Like we talked about this in our January committee meeting. I'm just curious. Is it just like time? We just have a lot going on. It's just like,
Well, there's always a lot going on, but we had a draft plan. We did spend time to refine it, and I think we have this area, Elmwood in Oakland. I think we have a plan that works, and I think we're comfortable with it. So, unfortunately, some of this takes some time.
So I want to go to something else that's been taking time, and that's the Greenway. So John, you came up with a plan, you and Patrick at your office came up with a plan that dealing with Dunnell Road, some of it prohibiting Parker on the section between Jefferson and Oakland, and then making Oakland to Oakview one way going south to match what we have in front of the train station going south. Nancy has raised concerns about the traffic flow there. So Paul was to ask you if you could analyze the impact on Valley by making those changes.
Yeah, I'll just say that we did have some data, historic data from in front of the firehouse, the intersection of Dunnell and Oakland, when we did the all-way stop there. So we had 12-hour counts, September of 22 or 23. Basically, because the section of Dunnell is one way down in front of the train station, there is not a significant amount of traffic traveling north, even at the firehouse, in front of the apartments and at the firehouse. To give you some just some numbers on that, during the busiest hour that day, there was only 34 cars that were traveling north. that's the busiest hour. That's 5 o'clock at night. So there's very little traffic that would get displaced if we continue the one-way designation.
Did you do
There is
that,
some, but it's not a tremendous number at all.
John, did you do that from Oakland to Jefferson?
No,
That's
what we
really-
did, we just pulled what we had in our files. So I
Oh.
can only tell you, you
Oakland to
know,
Jefferson is the more difficult one. Is the more trafficy one. And it's already narrow. That's where we're.
Oakland to Jefferson is not going to be one way.
Oh, okay, good.
That's going to be two-way because of the fire.
that's right.
Although we did hear yesterday from the deputy chief that if we wanted to make it one way, he would be okay with it because if they had to make a left, they would just go against the traffic.
Hmm.
I don't think that's a great idea, but
That would be
Right.
fun watching all those.
I think
We're
that
talking
was
about the
just
section by
between-
the civic house, right? The apartment in the civic.
yes, making that one way
That's
going
right.
towards the train station.
What happens to all that?
I'm curious when the data was pulled, because like I'm surprised that only 30 cars, just with the Y programming and whatever's happening in the civic. I mean, I'm for making it one way. I don't want to, I'm just mentioning.
I'm not. I think it's wide enough to be two ways, and I think there's opportunity. There's so much parking. People pull up to drop off kids at the Civic House at that bridge, you know, for the Y, but also just access to that part of the park. Unless we're gonna have parking one way going south. I don't know. I think it
Or maybe
needs.
maybe there's a drop off zone, because you're right. Like people pull out there even for the tennis camp or programming over the summer.
Yeah.
But I don't know, maybe if we think about, when we think about these things, making like drop off zones, we just said that for the high school, this area, it's just something to consider. Like I know the business districts have always talked about that for like Uber zones or DoorDash zones or Uber or whatever. It's just something to think about.
So John, can you get more information?
Sure, we can go collect more data if that's
Alright.
what
Just
you
work-
want. Absolutely.
Work that out with Paul because we've got to get him to some decision and it sounds like we need some more information in order to do that.
Okay.
And the other problem with that was we couldn't figure out, right, there's only one way for the bike lanes by the train. Wasn't
Yes,
there?
that's still an
Yeah.
issue.
Yeah, down by the train, yes.
And
The section above Oakview has enough room for the two-way. So
I
the
met with
down by the train
Paul.
was going to use the park.
I met with Paul a few weeks ago. We reviewed the plans, all the comments from the township committee, the bike user groups. We had a couple individual people reach out on their own with some feedback. So we went over all that feedback together, and as did John, and he provided us some comments. Paul and I talked about what we thought was worthwhile, realistic, and Paul was to give that feedback back to John. So I think the next step would be, you know, at least the things that we expect are doable to have those incorporated into the plan. And one of those is, you know, we have to have a two-way by the train station. And so I guess Paul and John, what is the timeline on getting some of those changes incorporated in the plan and back to us?
So I think to answer your question, we have parking along Denell, and we're very sensitive to losing parking. So we've looked at options such as widening the walkway in the park. And based on how many large trees, mature trees would be impacted by that, we quickly decided that that just wouldn't be a possibility. We've also looked at trying to reorient some of the parking, squeezing some of the lanes in certain areas to introduce a bike lane. And I don't think we have that fully worked out, the geometrics, but you know, I think we're looking to come up with recommendations. The problem is the road width is absolute. So if you want to maintain parking and you still want a one-way drive lane through there, there's not a whole lot of room left to incorporate two bike lanes. And that's at the end of the day, it's, you know, the math doesn't lie. So we'll present it, you know, by the next meeting, we'll present our best options and, you know, we can make a decision on how to go forward.
All right.
And then, John, there's one other thing on the agenda. Nancy, you brought up this email we received from the resident on Prospect that got hit by a car on the bike. and he comes up with some suggestions.
Oh, right.
So I want to put them up. I gotta find them first.
I have to look for my email.
So these are, yeah, I don't want to say his name, or his address, but we had some suggestions, John, as to what we should be doing. Talking about changing the interval for the light at Parker and Prospect, to making the no turn on red all the time instead of just having it done, when children are present.
Okay,
We
I
talked
like
about
that.
flex posts. I don't know if you saw these things or not.
I didn't, no.
All right. So what I would suggest is if you could take a look at those with Paul and then come back and give us your recommendation. I think some of these are actually pretty interesting.
You got that email, right? Did I forward it to copy you too?
Yeah, here's what he suggested. Make the area around Columbia school zone, reduce speed, leading pedestrian interval for, blah, 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 Parker. And then he talks about the flex post here because he says people are going in the other lane.
Okay,
Fading the no parking, no standing signs. That's something we can do at DPW.
mhm,
Talked about a three-way stop at Elmwood and Prospect, and then talked about the police department enforcing the law. So if you could take a look at this with Paul,
Yeah.
and then see if there's anything here that we ought to think about implementing.
sure, off the
And
cuff, I
then
like a
Mike
bunch of
and
those.
Paul,
Yeah.
you can take a look at those signs there and replace any of those signs, refresh them so that we're clear, giving people direction.
We'll take care of that.
All right, is there anything else on traffic calming that we need John for?
The only thing I wanted to bring up was, let's see, we talked about bike lanes. Tuscan Street, I think was on our agenda
Oh,
here.
right, yes,
And I
yes.
know, Ms. Engel, you had some concerns with that. So we had looked at Tuscan Street. This is between Burnett and Spring. A lot of people are using that as a cut through. We've made improvements. We've added striping improvements and signage improvements. We showed through data that it did reduce the speeds, but the volume of traffic was still very high. So one thought that we came up with recently was to consider making Tuscan Street a one-way. And we may be best served going from Burnett to Spring, because I think a lot of people are using that as a cut through to get to Burnett. So we may be best served by creating a one-way street, and by eliminating that additional lane of access for cars, we can now incorporate bike lanes on both sides. So we would have a dedicated bike lane on both sides. We'd have one-way traffic going towards Spring. And then we would have one lane of parking. The geometry permits us to have one lane of parking on one side. So we kind of achieve in some forms, I think, most of the objectives we're trying to achieve here, while still complying with the bike plan that was proposed.
No, we would need a return lane coming back from Springfield to. Well, you have to, I think what you need to do is to give us
A sketch or a proposal.
a sketch, and then, give us ideas as to how those cars will be displaced, where they'll go, how people will access Burnett off of Springfield. You have
Well-
Vermont, you have Wellesley.
Yeah.
Do we need to make any of those one way? So give us a plan.
Sure. And one of the things that Dynamic recommended was actually studying that whole area for traffic. And I agree with that recommendation. I think every time we change a lane of traffic or we add speed bumps, it has impacts to the adjoining streets. So this is a problematic area, and I think it's something that I've represented in other meetings that we should consider doing is performing a broader study of this area. So that's something that we'll look into addressing. But certainly by the next meeting, we could give you some thoughts on this, on what is getting impacted by making this a one-way. John, you think by the next meeting you could have some discussion points?
Absolutely.
And you're talking about one way from Burnett to Spring, right?
Yes.
Can you need to look at, John, the traffic coming on the other side of Springfield Avenue on Tuscan Street like, which direction are they going? Are they mostly turning one way or the other on Springfield Avenue? Or are they going straight on Tuscan Street? Because that'll be relevant to,
There's a lot of people that turn. I use that a lot. And then it's gonna back up, I'll tell you, it's gonna back up traffic on the other side. I mean, I love everything you said, Paul. I'm just gonna say that. Thank you, thank you, thank you. But it's gonna back up traffic on the other side of the gazebo on, what is that, like Vermont, whatever that street is. You know how if you're coming up,
Yep.
you make that first traffic light or the next one, and that other traffic light is like worse right now than the Tuscan Street ones. That's why people take
but
it.
it would stop. It would still be two-way coming out from the park onto Spring.
Oh, it would just be from?
Just be from Burnett to Springfield.
Right.
The other side of the street. So I was only bringing up the other one to make sure there's not a big volume of traffic going straight across onto Tuscan.
Yeah, I think I have counts from years ago that I could look at quick, as opposed to doing a whole new set, but I will look at that.
Like what, 30 years ago?
No.
More apartment development over there. I feel like we have new apartment developments.
So
it's
let's
just-
let Paul and let's not do their job. Let them do their job, and then they can come back with a plan. That's why we paid John the big bucks.
But I would just pay attention to when that data was collected, since we do have more.
I will
people.
gladly go get new data.
And
No problem.
and then John, while you're on here, we did put the complete streets policy because the DOT came out in December with an update of their policy. Are you working with other towns on this? And then Paul, how are we reacting to any changes here? I know that we did adopt a complete streets policy, but it's probably old and crusty and needs an update.
So
I
we
think
we
Pat is
definitely,
still looking at it, right? Because we've been talking about this a little bit.
we definitely need to update, the policy. It's been a long time since we adopted that. And look, in terms of complete streets, DOT's, pushing this, the state's pushing this. So, that's something that we're in agreement with, that we should, consider this. And I think incorporating bike lanes and considering all the traffic calming that we do. Whenever we develop reconstruct a street, we're looking at it from a complete street standpoint. So, I think it's just adopting it as part of our culture, when we look at projects and engineer things, it's a cultural shift, and that's because I think, Mr. DeLuca, you said something very insightful at yesterday's meeting, and you said it, up until now, a lot of the towns were car centric. The emphasis was on the efficiency of the car, not necessarily a pedestrian, or a bicyclist. And I think, we have to look at all of it. So that's the cultural shift.
And John, are you seeing this with other municipalities?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, almost every municipality now has a complete street policy, but having a policy is one thing. What you guys are doing is actually implementing complete streets improvements. All these bike lanes we talk about, Nancy, sorry, but the bump outs, all the pedestrian safety things, right? Everything you're talking about, we talked about, is complete streets. So, I think we just have to get over the hump, and not every project is going to be perfect, but we have to identify what we're trying to accomplish. And there's going to be someone that's either, a little bit inconvenienced or something, but for the greater good, a lot of the things we talked about this morning are moving in the right direction, Parker, Prospect, et cetera. So, I think I've been saying this to you guys, if we're waiting for 100% approval, I don't think we'll ever do these things. So I think having the complete streets policy and just saying, for the greater good, we got to try some of this is where we should head this year. So you guys are way ahead of most towns I work for. I'll tell you that.
We
Keep
always
saying
are.
that, John. You can come to every one of these meetings and keep
That's right.
saying,
Except I'm not opposed to bump outs, just not on narrow streets.
I got you.
yeah, she's in favor of the bump outs on Springfield Avenue.
Yeah,
That was a good thing.
right.
Okay, so if everybody's okay, we'll move away from sewers and traffic, and we'll go to recycling. Deb, you have some recommendations, and there's a thank you, John, and you're
Okay, folks.
welcome
Thank you,
also to
John.
stay for the rest.
Thanks.
We'll
Always
see
good to
you
see
again.
everybody.
Okay.
Okay.
John?
Deborah, we have a rather lengthy
Yeah.
memo, but I'm gonna I'm gonna put up the recommendations, okay? And then you can go through those.
Yeah, and Paul can also talk about this because I think he might have been on the recycling tour. Our environmental advisory committee, a bunch of members went to Bay Shore to tour the recycling facility and learn a little bit more about what happens to our recycling once it leaves Maplewood. And we've had robust conversations in environmental advisory committee about the types of things that we collect, whether we should open it up more, glass, how heavy it is and expensive it is, et cetera. And now I'm going to just throw it to Paul because he understand, they speak a different language than me sometimes, but we can talk about their recommendations a little bit.
Thank you, Ms. Engel. So we did have a tour of the facility, and it was requested by the Environmental Commission, so we arranged that. The Bay Shore staff were very professional and they were very accommodating. They were happy to spend time with us. I think they spent, these are the top managers there. They spent about 2 hours of their time that day, touring the facility and answering questions. I think the Environmental Commission represented the town very well. They had a bunch of questions that they asked, a lot, and virtually all of them were intelligent, sensible questions. So what we got out of it was simply that I think the receiving facility, the processing facility, Bay Shore, they have a lot of unique advantages over other places that we've used in the past, and we don't even need to mention names. But for example, they have one of the reasons we switched marketing was because the prior facility burnt down due to the lithium-ion batteries. Well, this facility has a complete fire suppression system because invariably these lithium-ion batteries get recycled. The other thing is, what was interesting was this facility domestically has end users, 96% of their waste stream is recycled with end users that are domestic. They're not shipping most of their material overseas. So when there were issues with, China not accepting, for example, our recycling and, other countries, they didn't have backups like some of the other facilities. So that was interesting to find out that domestically they're handling these things. I think, we saw evidence that the dual stream recycling is beneficial to our township. I think the Bay Shore staff, commented how well it's working for them and how well they believe it works in general. There's other towns that also do dual stream recycling, and it works for them as well. So the fact that we're doing dual stream, it produces we collect mixed paper and cardboard separately, and it produces a revenue source for us, which offsets the costs. And that's really important to keep our costs down, which is one of the reasons we did this. It also purifies the waste stream and the recycling, so it doesn't have to be sorted. That's another big advantage. And they have two main buildings where all the sorting occurs, and they toured us through both of them. It was impressive, the process that they had. This facility is capable of recycling all plastics, 1 through 7. So, right now, and this is based on our prior processing center, we've accepted plastics 1, 2, and 5, which are the most common plastics. But this facility has end users that actually can use the recycled material 1 through 7. So if inadvertently our residents dispose of our place 1 through 7 in our containers, this facility can capture it and recycle it. It's not a problem.
Well, we already knew that. We just decided back when we changed a couple years ago to the dual stream not to advertise it because there was Bay Shore had indicated that they do it less. So if they've increased that, then yeah, I'm totally in favor of increasing the number.
Yeah, let's go to the recommendations, Paul, because that we have to come up with decisions here.
Right. So they're favorable of Bay Shore. They want to try to increase the revenue stream that we're getting money for, which is the fiber. That makes sense, right? So that could be a campaign that we send out to people to try to promote better recycling of fiber and cardboard.
So just on that recommendation, is there any action that needs to be done, or we just decide, boom, we're going to start promoting 1 through 7?
In terms of plastics, I think we can make we could offer to people that they can now dispose or recycle plastics 1 through 7. What does
I-
that mean?
Yeah, I'm looking, I'm trying to find out if a decision has to be made, or does it just happen?
Vic, I think it's premature to make that decision because we're meeting soon to go over, both contracts are up at the end of this year. So I don't want
Yeah.
to confuse the public. If we're gonna, we have to put everything out to bid anyway, but most of us like Bay Shore, even though there's some closer venues now, and we're pretty sure we'll probably only end up with Basso again, but I don't know if we want to do it and then have to change next year.
Mayor, just to clarify, Bay Shore's contract, there's options to renew annual contracts. So we can go, I think, 2 years with Bay Shore to renew.
2 more
thought-
years, Paul?
Yes.
We didn't have a 5, it was only a 3-year with
I-
renewal.
The base is 3, but there's an option to extend it 1 year.
Okay, that's good
Times
to know.
2.
And
All right.
also, the marketing of recyclable materials is exempt from bidding, so we have a lot of flexibility there.
So given that we do have, a distance to go before it ends, should we just allow this to happen and promote it?
Sure.
Yes.
Okay.
I think we should coordinate with South Orange too, so there's not confusion between
Okay.
residents.
So Patrick, I'm gonna look, maybe you'll answer this. Does anybody have to make a decision, or does it just happen?
Let's just start marketing it. As long as we think it's good
we're
policy, let's just start doing it.
Okay. Anybody have a problem with that?
But I'll reach out. We'll reach out to South Orange because we should coordinate this with them.
Pat,
So-
aren't we meeting like in a week, Paul?
We're meeting to discuss the collection, right? It's the end of the month. Yeah, 2 weeks.
We'll tease them now. I mean, there's no.
Okay.
It'll be a pretty quick email.
Okay, and then on the recommendation to increase fiber, that's just a campaign, right?
Yeah, I'll put
Okay.
that on the communications committee and
Okay.
we'll do some kind of campaign, because that just brings in money to offset the cost, because the plastic, accepting more plastics, I don't know if it'll have an increase in cost or light, but it could, I guess.
Deb, I'll search for the graphics and stuff that we used when we switched to dual stream, so you can use, that was, what's her name, the
Yeah,
graphic.
Dave Tracy did them.
Yeah. Or she could probably send
They
it to
should
you.
be they should be in Canva that Cindy has access to already, because I think Danny said.
I just want to put on the record that, yes, we can accept the 1 through 7 and we could do a campaign, but just understand that if there is an uptick in commingled materials, that's considered commingled, that we do pay for that. We don't get that there's a cost to that. So it could be a modest cost, but there's a cost to that. I'm just informing everyone.
Okay, and then glass, we're just gonna keep, that's the recommendation?
Keep the
Yeah, the
cost.
issue with glass is it's so expensive and it costs money, and then they just bury it. They don't do anything with it.
Right,
It's the weight.
right. And then switching to in-house haul, well, that's a bigger conversation.
That's a
huge-
separate meeting, but I have a lot to say
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah, all right. So on those recommendations, the communications committee is gonna look at ways to market the, increasing a fiber collection. We agreed to the 1 through 7. We're gonna alert South Orange and then just let people know, recognizing that there may be a marginal cost increase. But it's getting put somewhere. It's getting put in the waste, if people are putting it in a waste stream, so let's put it in the recycling. If they can use it somehow, I think that would be better than burning it in Newark. We're gonna keep the glass, and then in-house hauling, good luck.
Yeah, seriously,
Good luck.
tell Bob, stop bringing that up. It's
Good
like
luck.
millions of dollars to set that up.
Good luck.
Plus some space somewhere.
All right, we're gonna move to Deborah, pros and cons on expanding jitney service.
Yeah, so I put this on the agenda because I just think about this traffic issue that we have and how to get cars off the road. I know I talk a lot about bike lanes, but then I also think about like public transportation, and it's come up in the youth advisory committee as well about how youth don't have ways to move around, and they're working on like something to read at a public meeting. But I'm just curious if expanding jitney service beyond commuters is possible. Like they're already doing a loop, like can they pick people up? Is there ways that when we look at a bike network, we talk about hitting institutions? Is there a way we can do that with our jitneys? The business districts have always talked about it. Can we have can we have a jitney running from Maplewood Village to Springfield Avenue? And so I know there's cost issues. I know there's issues. I know there's lots of issues, but we're talking about getting the electric jitneys. And I just wanted to start a conversation to hear, like, what are the challenges? Is this something that's been talked about before?
Yes.
What are the liability issues about having youth riding jitneys? Just start a conversation. And we can just open it here and people can think about it and we can talk offline, but that's kind of why I put it on the agenda.
Yeah, we talked about it, Vic, was it like, I don't know, 5 years ago, maybe 6?
2018.
Yeah, it was when, and there was, like, we talked about pickups, like on Oakview or drop-offs on Oakview by the train and loops. It was difficult to get any, usage or interest in it because there's no one time. It's not like a school or commuter where they all need to go at the same time. It's, it's more haphazard and people end up just driving or walking to, I think we should do a walking campaign to make, people walk more.
Some places are really far to walk though, like you can't really walk everywhere.
No, I know, but
But I'm
Yeah.
just thinking, like, I hear what you're saying, that people just want to go when they want to go, but you can also create a schedule for people, like if they know I mean, just like they have a train schedule or a bus, it's just changing human behavior. And I wasn't even thinking, oh, maybe it's after, so I don't know. So, okay, so the schedule of when people would want it, creating community interest in it, you say was an issue.
Can I jump in here? So we
Yeah.
looked at this in 2018 in different contexts, 2017, 2018, in a couple different contexts. The first context was part of the Maplewood Village strategic revisioning plan that was done by the state, by DCA. And that involved doing a lot of surveys in the community about a bunch of different things as it relates to Maplewood Village, but some of it was a bit more townwide expansive, including this idea of using our existing jitney service to bring people to downtown and away from downtown, and figuring out a loop and a time of day and how many times during the day, if it's only on the weekends, during the week, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And, and the results that we got from that survey, which were fulsome, by the way, because people were excited about this plan, and the planners did a really great job of community engagement and stakeholder engagement, was that most people were really excited about the jitney, and those people who use it as commuters, of course, this is pre-COVID, were happy to use it for that reason, but they weren't interested in using it for any other reason. Another challenge was, and of course, we're moving in a different direction now and things are going to be better, but the lack of ADA accessibility. Another major challenge was and remains staffing. A lot of times we have turnover with the drivers, and having drivers who can commit to more hours throughout the day outside of their pickups and drop-offs during train commuting hours in the AM and PM is a challenge. Fuel costs add up as well. These jitneys, produce a lot of smoke in the air, and it's costly. Of course, again, we're moving in a different direction with electric jitneys, which solves that challenge. But that was sort of where we were. Then we looked at it as part of our SOMA Two Towns for All Ages initiative, being a community that's age friendly. How do we get our seniors into downtown, especially those who are no longer driving, and so on and so forth? Again, the challenge was ADA accessibility for some of our seniors with mobility challenges. But we got pretty far in that regard in terms of figuring out a loop and stops and times during the day. It wasn't every day, it was like a couple times a week, and then the other days they would go to other areas and doctor's appointments nearby. But again, usage, we did it for a little bit. We did a pilot program during that time, but usage did not justify the staffing costs, fuel costs, and other infrastructure costs. We had very few people, despite marketing it and engaging people and talking about it in different groups in the community. Very few people took us up on it. Now, again, our community has changed significantly since 2018. Maybe the interest is different. It's great to be exploring it once again, but I just wanted to provide some of these details because we have talked about this a lot.
I appreciate it. I agree that it's different now than it was in 2017 and 2018. I think also like Uber and Lyfts have increased since 2017 and 2018, people leaving their cars at home. And I think traffic has increased since 2017 and 2018 on our streets. And the seniors ended up getting their own electric bus. So I don't know if it was a total bust that way. So I'm curious.
Well, they had a bus before.
Yeah, I'm curious, Dean, if you have that, if anyone has those survey results, and maybe we think about doing like another survey of how people move around or want to move around Maplewood and South Orange.
I can pull that and circulate it, of course.
So one thing we have to remember is that these jitneys are primarily for commuters, to get commuters to and from the train. And there's a certain degree of wear and tear on these pieces of equipment if they're used more. And we have a compact with the people that we bring to and from the train that we have to be reliable. And the jitney schedule in the morning, the jitneys are tied up from 6 a.m. to 9:30 a.m. and in the evening from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. So the window you're talking about is, about 7 hours during the day that the jitneys are even available if you can find a driver, which is a whole nother matter. So, there's a reason that some of these buses are cutting back, like the 31 and even transit, is because the people aren't taking buses. So I'm not sure that we're going to generate. We did have a bus once from Springfield Avenue to the Village and back, and no one took it. We tried that for a while. I don't hear a big clamoring for this, alternate kind of transportation. I hear it from seniors, and we're solving that by our, dial a ride or scheduled ride program. But, maybe there's something in the summertime, connecting parks for kids during the day. But beyond that, I don't think there's a huge a huge demand for this, but you can certainly test it out.
Well, I think amongst like middle schoolers and high schoolers, maybe there's a bigger demand, and the parents, because it's hard to move around, like especially the library being down for so long, for example, has been an issue. But I don't know. Okay, so I appreciate all the feedback, and I'm going to think about it, and I'll come back with it.
All right. Paul, give us an update on DeHart and your meeting with VHB.
Thank you, Mr. DeLuca. So we did have a chance to have a meeting with VHB, and we've been working with them on several concept sketches. I think we're going to screen share, bring up one right now. We have a couple to show you. So the thought was this: DeHart, if you look at a grass field, grass fields are typically rated anywhere from 600 to 800 hours of usage each year. That's most guidance, indicate that if everything's perfect in the field, you could get up to 800 hours of usage. And when we compare our usage from prior years, we hover from what my understanding is anywhere from 1,800 hours a year. So because the existing field has a softball diamond and, half of the field is not used or a portion of it, the thought came to us, well, what if we had two full-size competition fields that could be used and alternated? And, in the case of younger children, each field could actually be, subdivided, if you will, and lined for smaller kids, when they have tournaments. And, that will show shortly. So by sharing the field like this and breaking it up into two and eliminating the softball field, we actually, if each field is capable of 800 hours of usage, that brings us right around where the current usage is and the needs right now. So that's really the thought that went behind into this. Now, what's presented to you right now is a FIFA international sized field, okay? This is what you could see, play on TV, for example. And this field, if you look closely, and we don't have to get too much into the detail, this size field is really just too big for this area. Okay, we have Musco lighting that would have to get redirected. We would have retaining walls that would have to get installed. We have pathways that would have to get, redirected as well. It would add tremendous cost to the project. So it is not my recommendation to incorporate two side-by-side FIFA fields. So we directed VHB to look at another concept, and we'll bring that up now. This is the regulation size for high school soccer. And for all intents and purposes, we feel that this size field would probably be adequate. We still need to meet and go over this with Miss Mancuso, in terms of her usage. But the advantage of these two size fields are that the Musco lighting doesn't have to get reconstructed. The pathways can stay in place. The fencing can stay in place. There is no substantial reconstruction of features. And this actually provides for seating for the players. It provides an official area for the referees. And all of that furniture, outdoor furniture, for example, can be moved. Now, we also looked at the grading. Currently the grading of the field goes from top right to bottom left, and the slope is around 1.5%. It doesn't look it from here, but if you actually stand it and measure it, it's about a 6-foot drop. All right, is a 6-foot elevation change. So rather than grade each field, separately, moving water from the center of the field out to the edges, the code does allow the grading of the field to occur in one plane. So the thought was to maintain the drainage more or less. We may actually flatten it slightly, and more or less maintain the drainage across the field. Okay, this way, if we subdivide the field into smaller groups, into smaller fields, the grading doesn't get affected. If we want to have an international FIFA tournament, all right, you could create a FIFA size field going left to right, okay? And you could line the field that way. The reason we could get away with doing this is because the new field's going to have an underdrain. The underdrain is going to permit flatter grades, and it's going to capture that water that normally would run off from runoff, right, because of the grading. But we're going to have a series of pipes underneath the field that are going to collect all of the rainwater. And it's going to feed that rainwater and that percolated water into a series of collection pipes, okay? So Dave, can you share the other sketches as well, subdividing the field into smaller fields, please?
Well, I just want to let you know, you shouldn't give up your day job and become an artist.
So here's an example of, a smaller field that would be for youth, for example. This is, I believe, 11 and 12, a U10. So U10 is, is a youth field, and this is one way that the field could be lined. My understanding is that we don't actually line the fields for these tournaments, that the actual coaches and some of the other staff line the fields. So this would provide maximum flexibility. It also would allow us to rotate the fields to minimize usage and wear, okay? So if one side is wearing, if the center is wearing, we could rotate the fields and allow the grass to grow, right? Now, do we have another concept, the last concept that they came up with? So here's 4 youth-size fields. If there was some type of tournament for youth, we could actually line the field this way, right? Because the furniture is movable, we can move it to the side and reorient it, and then we could, line the grass with and making these fields. So that's the thought process behind this. We want to keep the grading on one plane. We're going to incorporate the the drainage system, the under drains that we spoke about. And the overall grading of the field will change, but it will not be substantial.
So Paul, is the drainage system the same for any design, any concept?
The under drain system is the same. It's gonna cover the same square footage and it's gonna capture that, you know, the entire field. The entire field's gonna be collected.
And is the grading the same for any concept?
Yes. It's gonna go from top right to bottom left. It's one plane, which is permitted and acceptable.
Mm-hmm.
And the softball field usage is such that it wouldn't be missed and it could be pushed over to Maple Crest?
That's my
you don't know.
understanding, yes.
Yeah,
They
of
don't
course.
schedule there
Oh.
now. No, we had wanted to keep it, or I think before it was kept just in case someone wanted to go over there and, you know, play around, but we don't have games or practices over there.
Now, I just want to emphasize one thing, even though we have two fields, we would have two fields and we're alternating. This has to be closely monitored. Obviously, we still need to curtail, we need to stay under that 800 hours per field of usage.
Right, but
And you
the-
know, we would be giving up our only lit softball field.
We'd be giving up the softball field, right?
Yeah.
That's gone.
But there are lit softball fields in South Orange where some of the groups that used to use D Hart until it got wrecked now have moved to South Orange.
Yeah, right now, I don't believe it's currently being used anyway.
No.
Aw, I miss it.
So talk about the process. You know, you've met with the consultant. We talked that the consultant was going to do some stakeholder interaction. Who are we bringing to the table to look at these and give us advice?
So the next person would be, obviously, the department would be Miss Mancuso and her group. We would want to present it to her, get any comments, make any tweaks or changes. We would want to make sure that the high school field is sufficient to handle, in most cases, the tournaments and events organizers that use this, that, you know, that's sufficient. And if that were the case, then we would take this probably to the rec board, get their comments. You know, and then once that happens, I think once we have a fairly refined sketch incorporating everyone's comments, then we would schedule, you know, a public hearing for this and get input on this.
So when you meet with Melissa, you know, I believe the group that uses this the most is the Cougars.
Yes, that's my
So
understanding.
getting their input on the front end would be better than waiting to later on.
Yeah, we're not actually, we can't go forward with any of the engineering because unfortunately, you know, once you engineer it, it's like dominoes. You change one thing, it's going to change everything. So we have to nail down the concept sketches. We have to nail down the, you know, the grading, the drainage, like the concepts have to be nailed down. And once we have that, we could proceed forward with engineering.
Right, but what I'm saying, that's why I asked you about the undersurface, the underground stuff is going to be the same for all different concepts, you said.
All the concepts you see can be done on one plane and it does not change the under drain. Now,
Right.
if
So
we change it, that could change the under drain system, but
no, I understand that, but so the you know the different concepts you have aren't going to impact the underground.
no,
So but you just need to get the concepts. I mean, I can understand the difference between having a softball field there or not is going to change everything.
sure,
So what would be useful is to get that decision done right away.
yes,
And that I think you can, you know, talk to Melissa and the rec committee and get that decision done.
yes,
And then the township committee can just hear what people are recommending and then make a decision.
yes, great.
I think, are there, in terms of external stakeholder engagement from people who use the field a lot, are there members from the fields committee on the rec committee? I forget where we ended up with that. Because it would be
We
good to get
don't-
their input too.
We don't have a fields committee. It's going to be a subcommittee of rec, but rec is very understaffed at the moment. So we do have rec. I would think that the MSO committee would be a good stakeholder to check with. as far as I know, I will say, being, a softball parent, that you're right. This is DeHart is not the DeHart softball field is not used a lot. Most of the games for the younger kids take place at Memorial Park, and then most of the games for the older kids take place in South Orange, where they have those lights right by the train station. So, but I think MSO committee would be the one to check with on this.
I personally would
But I
like
can
to
certainly
hear,
run it by rec as well. We have a meeting coming up.
sorry, Malia, I thought you were done. I was gonna say, I would want to hear Ms. Mancuso's opinions about usage and what she thinks. Cougars, I agree about Cougars, but they're an outside organization. I think we're trying to audit and figure out what's internal. And I mean, I'm not on that committee anymore, but those were the conversations last year about figuring out the usage and priority and how it all works. But I would want to hear her opinions about eliminating baseball, having the soccer field, what she thinks, and she's the one who's actually programming it.
Yeah, and to that point, Melissa meets with all of the groups that are interested in playtime, field time rather, and they're not Cougars. They're all internal local clubs, and she can get their input too. I think because these are people who use the fields.
Yeah, so for me, I
So-
feel like I can't even comment until I hear from her because it's a usage side.
Yeah, and I don't think we're asking for comments today. We're just giving Paul and Patrick the responsibility to get these conversations going. I know, Patrick, you and Paul and Melissa meet every Thursday or every
Yeah, every
week or
other
so.
Thursday. Yeah.
So this should be on the next agenda so you can get this moving.
Yep. And that was
Can
our
we-
expectation. I don't want anyone to think that it wasn't our plan.
Can we share this with the entire township committee?
We're all here.
No, I mean by email.
Oh.
Yeah.
I
But this
mean,
isn't public though, right? Well, it's public
Public.
now because it's in this meeting, but just
Yeah,
so if
but-
anybody, we want to make sure that these are just ideas.
Of
yeah,
course.
not anywhere.
Okay, let's move on. Paul,
Paul, I just want to thank you for the, innovative idea for you guys over, in discussing this and meeting with everybody, because yeah, if the usage is down, I'll be very sad since I played softball in that field for 20 years or whatever, but I think this might be a huge help to our field usage issues and resting our existing fields. Thank you.
okay. We're gonna do some follow-up items. The stormwater utility, we've voted on all the documents we needed to vote on. There is a stormwater utility page on our website, on the town website, and Deborah, if you could take, with the communications committee, take a look at this. See what we might want to add. I mean, it's kind of bare bones, but at least it's a start.
And we've been adding stuff as we go along. You see that the credit policy is up there recently. So as we get new things, we'll continue to put them up there.
Paul, Maple Terrace. We talked about bids going out in the summer, construction to start late fall, early spring of 26, 4 months construction. Are we still on schedule for all that?
I think we are still on schedule with, a spring 26 construction. What we're working on now are really two things. One, the easements that are required. I had sent that recently to Ms. Credidio. And Mr. Weary, I think I CC'd you on that. So it's just a matter of Ms. Credidio presenting that to the residents and getting their sign-offs and preparing the deeds and recording those easements. The second thing is the mitigation of wetlands and riparian buffer infractions as a result of the project. And both Mr. Berry and I had looked at some mapping to see, ways that we can mitigate as per DEP. The problem exists that there's not a wetlands bank in this area that can simply, we could pay a monetary fee to pay into this wetlands bank. So it requires us to do an investigation in terms of planting in places in our township. The wetlands impacts at a certain ratio, I think it's 3 to 1, as well as riparian impacts. So we looked through it. We did not see, we presented areas to Mr. Scherer of NV5, Fred Scherer. And, you know, based on his review, he was not happy with the locations that we identified. He did his own review of the mapping, available mapping, and concluded that there really are not areas suitable for restoring wetlands and riparians areas. So we're going to go back to DEP with this information and ask them if we can get some type of exemption and allow us to just pay into a bank of their choosing, to mitigate these impacts.
But that won't prohibit from moving the construction forward, or is it a condition that requires it?
Well, it's a condition that requires be prior to the construction because it's part of the permit. And, you know, that's something that we just have to work that out. And that's largely in the hands of DEP. So I think we've done our front end work. Mr. Scherer is going to approach DEP and he's going to present our findings, and then we're going to try to, again, get some type of understanding or waiver from them that allows us to pay into the bank.
But if they don't give us that waiver, then what happens then?
Then we'd have to look further and try to come up with a plan to restore these impacts. So we would have to, look at places such as Memorial Park, where we would have to plant, certain wetlands and riparian buffers and conserve them. And, it's a historic park. We know it's not really suitable for this type of use. So that's something that we'll cross that bridge if we have to.
Paul, is there anything we can do at the golf course?
It's a possibility. I never spoke to the golf course about it, but it's something that it's not a bad idea. I didn't
I'm
consider
thinking
it.
of the area, off of Pearson. Because that area is mostly used for their operations and would not impact the golfing.
We'll certainly consider that too, and we'll bring that up with Fred.
All right, East Branch of the Rawway. What's the status of the dam site cleanup? I know you mentioned that there's some concerns about the bridge stability.
So we met with the county and we spoke to them and we reviewed drawings. And, essentially what happened was after Ida, the abutment of that bridge was almost lost during Ida. So they had a huge cavity back there and they poured lots of concrete in that area. So that concrete spilled all around the abutments, which reduced the cross section. And we approached the county and said, why can't we eliminate or reduce some of this concrete that was poured? And I think they presented some pushback. They didn't close the door, I don't think, to doing that. But one of the concerns that we had was also the water. There's a water main that goes through there that's owned by New Jersey American Water. So we're trying to get more information from them. I gave Mr. Scherer the contacts that I had, and he was corresponding with Mr. Malloy of New Jersey American Water to get that information. So I haven't received an update since then. We recently had these meetings. Mr. Barry, do you have any updates beyond that you're aware of?
As of right now, we don't have further updates. As Paul said, the NV5 is meeting with Jersey American and trying to confirm the boundaries of work performed so far.
Okay. The Maplewood Tire parking on Hilton in Vermont, we brought this up at the last meeting.
So at the last meeting, I think we discussed that this could be a code enforcement issue, and I spoke to Ms. DePalma about this, and we had a conversation on this, and she's gonna take it from here and look into it.
I thought she was gonna talk to Maplewood Tire
She
and,
was.
I
yeah.
think she's going to.
Pat, do you know if maybe you could follow up, see if she has?
Yeah, I will.
Yeah, because I think it's their operations that we were worried about, how they're taking up street parking when they didn't used to.
Okay. The electric bus, is it operating yet?
So the bus is operating, but you're not gonna believe this. We found a leak in the steering pump.
Oh, Jesus.
And we've identified it. There's an O-ring gasket that's impacted, but we don't have the tools or the ability to change it out. So they're sending a crew out to change it out. I don't have a date when that's happening. I don't know, Mr. Haran, if you have that from Mr. Malavasi, when that's happening, but my understanding is it's soon.
Yeah, I don't have a hard date yet, but it's in the works.
We also did get an update on the graphics design, and the graphics are near complete. So once I'm guessing maybe by the end of next week, we might be able to have the graphics installed. That's best case scenario, but if the vehicle's on a lift, that could impact that date and it could extend it a little bit.
What's taken so long to letter the bus?
They're just very busy. The
Fun.
vendor we're using, they're backed up.
That's
We certainly
crazy.
don't want to do a ribbon cutting while the bus is on the
No.
lift. So
Yeah,
I
that
think
would
what
be
we want
really,
to do is once you get
That'd
it,
be dangerous.
once you get the stencil, let it operate a little bit, and then we can do a ribbon cutting.
Sounds good.
I can stencil it.
There you go. All right. We're gonna move through the lightning round now, Paul. We got about 16 minutes, so
Lightning round. So police building. We looked into the SEPI grant. I spoke to Miss Woods, Tracy Woods. And there's a problem on their end with the funding, and it might get yanked with everything that's going on politically in our world right now. So she said the state is looking into a secondary means of funding these programs if that does happen, but the federal funding may get yanked. FYI.
Yep.
Part of the delay was them using Sage. The BPU's not used to using Sage. It's a DOT program. So they're getting up to speed with that, and she anticipates that if assuming it does not get yanked as early as mid-March to late March, they'll release this, and then we could go forward with that. Obviously, our plans are ready for public bidding once that happens. Town Hall, no updates there. The greenhouse, there's a couple updates. So we have a bid package that's out for the heater and boiler, and that's due March 20th. We have a skins that were awarded to Custis, the skin replacement, and that's going to be mid-March as well, sometime in March. And the underground storage tank, we did get pricing from various vendors, and Mr. Berry and I are going to make a recommendation and get that work scheduled. So that's going to happen in the near future as well. In terms of the woodland, I know our architect is preparing a set of plans. Mr. Berry, do you have any updates on that for the one door?
The consultant, Connolly Hickey, is publishing their RFP for this work in the coming week. And that'll be collecting proposals by the end of the month.
Bergdorf in 1978, I do not have any updates there or anything to add. I don't have anything for the senior center. The Hilton branch, we're closing out the roof project. That's complete. So finally, that's done. In terms of the library project, obviously every day it's nearing completion. I think there's several things that we're concerned with. Number one, a sanitary sewer line was recently installed that has to be pressure tested. So that's going to be done the 17th, which is coming up. It's a holiday. It's a Monday. But we're coordinating that effort. The road's going to have to be closed for a short period of time. Also, the sidewalk in front of the building, it was brought to my attention that it's in, pretty bad disrepair since all this work's been going on. And my recommendation would be to reconstruct all of the sidewalk, and that's something that we're going to look at, including the aprons.
What about Baker Street right there by the library where they had to go in and open up the road? When will that be repaired and by whom?
So that would be done by Palpro, the full width paving, I think you're referring to, Mr. Daffis, and that would be Palpro, and that is going to be done, I think, when the weather's a little more mild.
Thank you.
They did a repair last week, and that's temporary, and then they'll do what Paul said, grind it up and repave.
The Civic House, DPW had replaced the entire flooring, and that was a pretty substantial job. I think I looked at it, it looks fantastic. Mr. Haran, you want to expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, we had a steam pipe break underneath the floor, causing a lot of water damage to the subfloor and the main floor on top. So we went in there and ripped everything out to the joist. We replaced a couple of joists in there, threw a new subfloor down, and then all new hardwood floor in there. So I thought the guys did a great job on it.
It looks great. The firehouse, so the Boyden Avenue 2, the Boyden Ave firehouse, the roof replacement project is moving forward. We're in the process of reviewing and approving shop drawings from the contractor Safeway. If you recall, Safeway was the contractor who replaced the flat roof above our conference room, the side room off the side of town hall. That, it's a good roofer. So they're in the process of scheduling that. Obviously, we have to work with the fire department to make sure that the work does not conflict with their ability to fight fires. In terms of park maintenance, I don't really have much to add other than the snow removal that we've been doing. Mr. Rain, you want to say anything on that?
No, like you just said, there's not much happening with park maintenance right now. We've been, combating some of these recent snow and ice events. So we've just been focusing on making sure our equipment is up and running, making repairs to plow blades, replacing shoes, and making sure all the spreaders are operational.
Thank you. Nothing to add on the pool. I will add the accessible playground. A total of 8 bids were received for the design of the accessible playground. I've reviewed every single one of them, as did Mr. Berry, and we have recommendations, and I think we have a meeting that's scheduled to review these RFPs. Do you have anything
This afternoon.
This afternoon, right? So I'm looking forward to that. Village Center parking lot, the rail was installed and the doors were hung on the trash enclosure. The work is complete as far as the contracted D&L goes. I will add
There's still a section of wood fencing.
Yeah, that was the temporary snow fence, and I spoke to Mr. Rand about that. We've been dealing with snow removal, but in the near future, that'll be removed.
So there's not going to be a rail there at that portion?
No, the whole extent, unfortunately with the contract, the rail could not extend along the entire portion. I mean, prior to that, it had no rail.
Right.
So this is a significant safety improvement, but yes, at some point, we're gonna look at probably completing that entire stretch, but
Okay.
but the wooden fence is temporary and that's gonna be removed shortly.
Right.
In terms of county projects, I think in the spring, the county's gonna probably resume work. There really hasn't been a lot on that front. Community development block projects, the plans are complete. We're looking to bid this in March. And we did attend a ribbon cutting ceremony, Mr. Berry did, and we received funds for that. So in terms of safe routes to schools, all the approvals for the preliminary design were sent to the state and they acknowledged receiving that. And we're setting up a meeting with GPI to kickstart the design.
And Paul, you were going to send out a list of the roads that that you worked on. Deborah had asked you for that.
I did send it to her.
Thank you so much.
You were going to send it to everybody.
Oh, okay.
Just send what you sent to her, send it to everyone so we're all aware. And then
Okay.
Springfield Avenue, what is the date we're going out to bid?
It's been bid and it's been awarded to DLS. So we've already had our pre-construction meeting for
Okay,
Springfield Avenue.
okay.
Yeah, and I've
When is it
spoken
gonna-
to,
What is the schedule now?
so the schedule, they're looking to start late March. They want to start the concrete work. That's what they're looking at. There's got to be some public noticing. I spoke to Miss Wallace about that.
Okay.
There's also a series of benches that she's ordering that are, the newer style benches that's going to be installed as well. But the paving is not going to occur until probably May or June. And we've already had one meeting with NJ Transit to try to coordinate this effort.
Okay.
Moving on to stormwater management.
Ask a question about that. I'm sorry. The May or June timing. Is this by the Springfield Avenue part by the gazebo and stuff?
This is all of Springfield Avenue.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about just because I know that they do like high school stuff by the gazebo around like prom and stuff. So I'm just flagging that so that we can coordinate and make sure we don't disrupt.
Sure. We'll look to court. Obviously, we want to minimize disruption events, any events that are occurring. I think Ms. Wallace should know about that, Ms. Mancuso. So we'll reach out to both and make sure that the work doesn't conflict with that. That's a good point.
Thank you.
In terms of stormwater management, the floodplain ordinance, so I know that Ms. Credidio had reviewed that. And she sent out a draft and
She told me that DEP had to look at it before we adopt it.
well, I heard that too. So
Okay.
I don't, I have to talk with her about that because I don't know if she's sending it to DEP. I'm not sure how that's occurring.
Okay, so you just follow up on that.
I will. Tiffany Place, good news. We did get notice from Irvington and we did get the signed agreement. So that's recently, we just got that. So, Mr. Wary, if I didn't send it to you, I will send that to you so you have it for your records and you can review it. But it's
Is that going to be a
basically,
stormwater utility project?
it's a stormwater utility project, yes. So, we have some funding, but I don't think we have enough to do the full project. So yeah, it would probably be the stormwater utility. We did build it into the budget as well.
And we're going to see that, just Patrick, we're going to see that stormwater utility proposal at our next budget meeting, right?
That's right, along with capital.
Thank you. All right, Paul, you got 5 minutes.
Traffic calming, we resent out the package for striping for Maplewood Ave and Newark Way. The quotes are due the 19th. So as soon as we get those, we'll recommend an award and we'll get the work ready. Realistically, you can't do thermoplastic striping in 30-degree temperatures. So,
Right.
that's a early spring project. And Prospect in Oakland and Oakview, I think we spoke about
we
and
talked about that,
Nick was
yeah.
here. We spoke about Basso in terms of recycling. We have a meeting scheduled with South Orange, and that's going to be reviewed. I will note that we've had many complaints on Basso recently, and I think, Mr. Wary, you've even experienced some of that. So, we've been putting the pressure on Mr. Basso. We put him on notice for these things, and there is a provision in the contract that allows us to assess penalties if they continue with the behavior and don't fix it. Since we've put him on notice, I think I've seen improvements. In the work, they've certainly tried to be more responsive, but their trucks are old. When they crush the material, any glass that's in there just falls through the belly of these machines. So we told them to fix it or he's getting penalized.
Paul, Roger used to send letters to them fairly regularly. You should probably just have Jen send one.
All right, anything else, Paul?
One last thing, the Duran Hedden House, we have an RFP package which went out for the roof replacement there. We got pricing from one company, which is a little surprising. We were expecting 2 or 3 price quotes, so I'm working on that for the roof replacement. I'm just putting that out there.
Who was the one, Paul? Scott's?
No, it
All right.
wasn't Scott's.
That's all.
Oh,
That's all.
Joe.
Okay, thank you.
And Patrick, on the Maple Terrace, on the easements that Jennifer's working on, can you just make sure she's getting that done?
It's on my list from today.
Thank you. All right, is there anything else anybody has? We've got 2 minutes.
Good job to DPW and everyone on all the snow and ice and so much snow and ice this year.
Yes.
That was nicely.
I just had a question about, I think there's gonna be a petition coming to us to try to get a signalized intersection where Newark Way and Rutgers are. I think, not Newark Way and Rutgers, Burnett and Rutgers, I think. But we had an feasibility study done there, right? And it showed there was no.
If I recall, it showed that it wasn't warranted.
I think once we also talked about necking down that intersection, I think maybe that would help. It's a pretty wide four-way, right? So it might be something to just take a look at because we're gonna be getting, I think it was, Ted, what's his name? Dorset.
Dorset,
Started,
Burnett and where?
Rutgers.
Rucker,
Right, but
the four-way stop.
yeah, we
Yeah.
got it wasn't warranted.
Yeah.
I know, I told him that, but then
Okay.
he's still doing it anyway.
Oh, okay, okay.
But no, and also, but it might be worth looking at narrowing that intersection because it's really wide. Maybe that would help with whatever's going on there. But I mean, I don't know why people think that a signalized intersection is automatically mean nobody gets hit. We just had somebody get hit at Parker in the, it's, you know, it's not a be all end all solution. And it's $700,000.
Well, in the master plan, I think there's a diagram of how you can tighten that intersection.
There is, I was just gonna say that.
Yeah,
So take a look at the master plan, because there's something in there that calls for those curbs to just bump out and tighten that up.
and that might,
Take a look.
Well, we must have, and maybe you can put together, in anticipation of this, maybe you can put together some crash data from that, you know, pre four-way stop and post, just so we have it.
because I think it's,
Okay.
and you changed their speed, right? Did they go down from 35 to 25?
In Union did, yes, the whole way.
But that doesn't mean people aren't still going what they were used to going at 35, so.
And the police have been enforcing that four-way stop there and at Lexington and Rutgers, so.
I take that four-way stop often. I mean, most cases, I think people are, observing it
Right.
and respecting
Right.
it, so.
That's why I think crash data before and after would be helpful, plus the analysis.
Okay, anything else?
Nope,
All
bye.
right, thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.